All right, so our next question came in, how do you use the knowledge of intervals in a song? All right, that's a great question because what we've done in the interval section, I showed you guys, famous songs that you would know and how to recognize the different intervals, all right? Whether it's major intervals or minor intervals. We covered all 12 of those in the ear training section. So how do you use that in the song? Well, one way is if you want to work out guitar lines, right? Or melody lines or anything, and if you kind of hear it, what's happening with a melody, it's a different combination of intervals packaged together in a melodic phrase, all right? And then when someone plays the melody, your ear kind of hears the phrase in its entirety, right? And that's just the way that we learn to hear music in those little melodic packages, so to speak, a phrase, all right? The same way in which when you read, you actually don't read the letters anymore, you just see the word, guitar, Kemper, pedal. You don't see P-E-D-A-L, you just read pedal. You see it as one and you take that in. That's what your brain is very good at, recognizing patterns, right? And then it bundles information together. It's the same with a phrase, okay? So what's very helpful when you try and work out melodies is to break down the phrase in the same way you would take a word and break down the letters, right? So one of my kids, my oldest, is just starting to kind of write out his name, and he's very much like, he knows what the letters are, but he's learning to write, he's learning to recognize them. So you can actually recognize some words, but it's mostly based around logos that he's seen before, and then we've told him what the word is, so he starts recognizing the patterns. But now he's starting to see the single letters, and he kind of sounds them out, and then that gives you the word. What you can do is the same thing when you work out melodies, right? So if you think about Lion and the Lamb, for example. Okay, so that's a phrase. Most people would hear that and it's kind of a phrase. But what I want you to do is I want you to take famous intros or famous lines that you know and go and deconstruct them. So Lion and the Lamb starts like this. Notes 1 to 2 will be. Notes 2 to 3 will be. Notes 3 to 4. Notes 4 to 5. 5 to 6. Okay? So you just take notes 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, 5 to 6. What are those notes, right? And then you want to ask yourself, well, based on your knowledge of the intervals, let's look at notes 1 and 2. What interval does that remind you of? Well, it's Happy Birthday, right? That we looked at in the ear training section. So, and the same from 2 to 3. Obviously now that's in a different key, but it was basically a major second to a major second. Check this out. Then again a major second. So what's happening here? That's a minor third. We used Smoke and Water as the famous song there. And that sounds very different to, which is a major second. And then for the final one, we went. Remember the Pink Panther theme that we looked at, which was a minor second. So when you deconstruct a melody like that, your ear starts to hear the intervals, and that is powerful because let me tell you why. Remember earlier I said my son can maybe see a word and then he knows what that word is, but not because he can read the letters to make up the word, just because he's recognized the pattern before. We told him what that word is. I can't even think of the word what it might be. Maybe it's definitely his name, because he can write that, but he's recognized the pattern and I can write his name, but he can't write anything else because he hasn't learned how to make words up using the individual letters, okay? And most guitar players are like that too. They learn a lick or a phrase, their ear kind of hears it, and then they can replicate it with their hands. The same way that my boy Luther can see his name and then kind of write it out, but he can't write Kemper or Pori Smith or whatever the case may be, right? So what do we want to do? You want to learn how to deconstruct, the words in the alphabet, and then you can start writing anything you want, and you can read anything you want, right? So with music, it's the same. So that's probably one of the best explanations I can give you, is learn to deconstruct a melody looking at the intervallic structure. All that means is you just take notes 1 to 2, notes 2 to 3, and then you just basically go and look at what that is, because then from there you can go ahead and start hearing the intervals much easier, because you've learned how to not hear a melody and a phrase in its entirety. You've learned how to deconstruct it and actually see what those intervals are, right? So let's take another one, for example. There's one of the songs has I think it's One Thing Remains. Okay, one of the versions kind of goes like that. So again, just go and deconstruct it, but here's what you got to do. Those are the first 4 notes. So we didn't do much focusing on descending intervals, but then you just reverse it. That's obviously a perfect fifth. I'm just descending it. So now you know, whenever you hear that sound, it's a perfect fifth, right? And then it went, so that's notes 1 to 2, notes 2 to 3 is that. That's a major second again, right? And then you add again, that's a perfect fifth. So add a perfect fifth, major second, perfect fifth. So there we add. And then here we have a major third. So hopefully this makes sense to you. I'm literally just deconstructing the notes and I'm looking for those intervals. So how would you then use that in the song? Well, first of all, you can work out riffs and hooks and melodies so much easier, because you're not bound by having to know the melody or the hook for that matter. You can just know what the intervals are. So many times when you're playing a song and your ear, for example, I think in here for you in the verses they had something like, so what is that? It's an octave that we had from Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and then when it went to D, what is that? That is a major seventh. Alright, we looked at that in the ear training section as well. So then your ear, when it hears where you want to go, and if you know what the intervals are, you can then replicate it on the guitar. So write back and let me know if that made sense. We want to deconstruct melodies by looking at the intervallic structure in the same way that we would deconstruct words by looking at the individual letters. Because if we know how the individual letters work, how they sound, how you can put them together, then you can read, then you can write, then you can communicate, right? So think of great writers, like Ernest Hemingway is obviously one of the great writers. So when he was writing, he could just sit down and let the ideas flow. He could just write. And he also had a thing that he doesn't want to edit what he's writing. He just wants to write and then come back later and edit. But He wasn't stuck with, okay, cool, how do I spell words or how do I write? Or no, he just had the skill to the physical, mechanical skill of writing, and he could just write, okay? And it's the same with us as guitarists. We don't want to get stuck about, okay, great, if I'm going to write something, how do I spell a certain word again? No, you just want to go, you want to be unencumbered in the art of playing guitar. And that's what's happening in worship music, right? So that is why I was able to kind of show you some of these melodies with some of the melodic structure using the intervals. And now when you hear things in a song, just isolate a one little section and then sing it, right? So you want to start getting used to just hearing and singing these intervals, because then you can, like, if you know the alphabet and you know how to write the letters, you can write it any word someone tells you on whatever you want to do, and you want that to be the same with the guitar. So hopefully that makes sense. That is how you would use intervals to in a musical situation, how to work out riffs. And then as you're playing, you might hear something, and then if you know it's a certain sound, you know how to replicate that, because you know what the intervals sound like and where to find the sounds on the guitar. It's a very deep topic, this. Hopefully I've simplified it for you, in a way that it makes sense as it relates to worship guitar. And then we can always dive deeper into this in future lessons, because developing your ear is one of the best things that you can do as a guitarist. And then secondly, focusing on your technique so that you can replicate what you hear. All right. So that understanding between the physical and the oral abilities, and when you add the mental understanding with theory, you've got a three-dimensional approach. So in the rest of the lessons for this month, part of the plug and play practice plan, you can check out some of the examples that will help you with your technique. All right, guys, there we go. Hope it all makes sense. Let me know if you have any other questions, and we can cover that in some of the live sessions.